He stepped out of Marseille prison with 47 euros, a grapefruit-sized GPS jammer in his pocket, and a file stamped unemployable like a second sentence. The city greeted Nabil Arroyo with salt wind, broken shutters, and a job offer so humiliating it felt designed to keep his head down forever. At 4 each morning, while the harbor sky was still purple, he scrubbed abandoned tram benches, slick with rain, gum, and old contempt. Commuters avoided his eyes, council workers checked his wristband, and every dirty plank seemed to whisper that a man could be cleaned without ever being forgiven. The hardest obstacle was not poverty, but the invisible cage of being watched, where every mistake looked like proof that everyone had been right. Nabil understood systems because he had once survived by reading them, from patrol rhythms to alley exits to the silent geography of danger. Instead of pretending his past had vanished, he studied how the neighborhood still moved after dark, like cracked machinery nobody bothered to repair. He noticed rooftop beehives with busted locks, sweet targets for vandals, hanging above apartment blocks where elderly tenants relied on the honey money. He noticed kids cutting across gang corners because the shortest path to home looked harmless at sunset and turned predatory 10 minutes later. He noticed old rail maps fading inside a shuttered tram depot, their colored lines still teaching how a city could be read like a pulse. So he made a private rule that changed everything: use one dangerous skill each night for something undeniably useful by sunrise. The GPS jammer, once a symbol of evasion, became a tool to test dead zones and blackout pockets where neighbors would panic first. With scrap metal from repair bins, he filed tiny replacement latches for rooftop hive boxes, hands steady from years spent manipulating locks for worse reasons. He climbed stairwells that smelled like fried garlic and wet concrete, leaving hives sealed tight before dawn painted the chimneys gold. During his mandatory community hours, he collected broken bench slats, warped signposts, and cracked laminate panels that everyone else treated as municipal trash. At night, he sanded them smooth in a storage shed, turning waste wood into hand-painted direction boards with arrows bold enough for children and seniors. He remembered the coded chalk signs lookouts used on corners, then stripped them of menace and repurposed them as secret safety language. A single white arrow near a bakery meant the gang crew had shifted 2 streets east, so kids should cut behind the laundromat instead. 2 short chalk lines beneath a stair rail meant the rooftop path was unlocked, lit, and monitored by 3 grandmothers who missed nothing. He never called it heroism, because heroism sounds grand, while real repair often looks like kneeling in dirt with cold fingers and leftover paint. On Sundays, he invited neighborhood kids to the shuttered depot fence and taught them to read old rail maps through the chain links. He showed them how colors, symbols, and transfer points could reveal safer routes, backup plans, and hidden shortcuts that did not pass temptation. His lesson was simple and practical. If panic kills judgment, prepare your path before you need to run it. Some children came for curiosity, some for the contraband thrill of learning from a former convict, and some because nobody had asked their minds to work this way before. He turned map reading into a game of survival math, asking which route stayed brightest, which staircase had 2 exits, which square trapped you. The kids began drawing their own neighborhood atlases on butcher paper, marking safe shops, kind doorbells, loose dogs, and corners where trouble bloomed. Their parents, suspicious at first, watched from windows as children who once drifted now walked home with purpose and folded maps in their pockets. The council still saw Nabil as cheap labor, useful before sunrise and disposable by breakfast, so he kept his side mission invisible. Every obstacle sharpened him: parole curfews, random checks, rumors from old associates, and the corrosive insult of being trusted with mops but not keys. When a former crew member offered fast cash for the jammer, Nabil felt the old current flicker through him, like a remembered shortcut. He answered by dismantling part of it on his work table, salvaging copper and casing to build battery boxes for stairwell emergency lights. Redemption, he learned, is not a mood, but a sequence of mechanical decisions repeated until your hands stop reaching backward. Then came the summer blackout, sudden and total, when heat rolled off the streets and Marseille snapped into darkness block by block. Elevators froze, shop alarms wailed uselessly, and traffic lights died as if the city had forgotten its own nervous system. In the first 10 minutes, confusion surged toward the same corners Nabil had spent months trying to redraw in children's minds. But his handmade signboards, mounted quietly over weeks on alleys, stairwells, courtyards, and depot walls, began to matter all at once. Arrows caught flashlight beams and moonlight, pointing toward open courtyards, rooftop exits, public fountains, and buildings with residents ready to help. Chalk symbols glowed pale on curbs and brick, guiding kids away from trapped intersections and steering seniors toward shaded gathering spots. The old rail maps the children had practiced now became living memory, unfolding in small hands as neighborhood navigation manuals when phones turned useless. Nabil moved through the blackout, carrying a bucket of tools, tightening jammed gates, relatching hive roofs, and checking battery lights he had built from scrap. On one block, bees stayed calm because their boxes were sealed, and the rooftop keeper avoided a fall while searching in darkness. On another, 3 brothers bypassed a recruitment corner entirely because they recognized the bakery arrow and took the laundromat route home. At the depot wall, children became guides for adults, tracing dead tram lines with their fingers and translating them into walking paths through the blackout. The neighborhood did not become perfect that night, but panic thinned into movement, and movement turned into mutual trust. By dawn, the same council that once stamped him unemployable stood under emergency lamps, watching residents credit anonymous signboards for keeping streets orderly. Then someone pointed to Nabil's paint-scarred hands, his scrap-built light boxes, and the familiar arrows already leading volunteers toward water and medicine. What shocked them was not that he had helped, but that he had built safety from the exact skills they only knew how to fear. He had studied blind spots, route patterns, coded marks, lock mechanics, and crowd behavior, then turned every former weapon into infrastructure. That is the takeaway, buried inside his story. Your worst pattern often contains the blueprint for your most useful contribution when redirected with discipline. If you are rebuilding a life, start by listing the skills you are ashamed of in brutally specific language, not soft excuses. Then ask which part of each skill is neutral and transferable, because precision, timing, persuasion, observation, and system reading are tools before they are sins. Next, solve one visible problem close enough to touch, because abstract redemption crumbles, while concrete usefulness can be measured by mourning. Map your danger zones the way Nabil mapped corners, whether they are streets, habits, apps, debts, or people who pull your future backward. Create replacement routes before the crisis hits, because willpower fails fastest when panic arrives and the old path is already memorized. Leave signals for your better self, like chalk arrows in daily life, prepared meals, blocked numbers, printed schedules, saved bus fare, and names of safe people. Learn one neglected system around you, because neighborhoods, workplaces, and families all reveal hidden exits to those willing to study them patiently. Most of all, accept the insult of starting small, since many lives are rebuilt not with grand applause but with ugly jobs done before dawn. Nabil did not erase his record, but he outbuilt it, board by board and route by route, until even darkness followed his directions toward safety. That is how a man once tracked by the city became the one quietly teaching the city how not to get lost.